In just 3 short years, Conor McGregor went from an out-of-work would-be plumber to the biggest star in MMA history. After becoming the first UFC fighter to hold 2 belts simultaneously, Conor has been chasing a fight with boxing legend Floyd Mayweather Jr. This has annoyed a lot of hardcore MMA fans, so we're going to talk about 10 fights for Conor McGregor better than Floyd Mayweather. Conor is not unbeatable, and we think that all 10 of the guys on this list have the tools to beat him, although that doesn't necessarily mean they will. Let us know what your favorites are, and remember to push that red button to subscribe for more. Khabib Nurmagomedov. We really think that Conor should focus on MMA, especially when he has so many potential challengers at lightweight, the UFC's deepest division. Khabib Nurmagomedov is a prime example. The Dagestani is an expert in freestyle wrestling and the Russian martial art of Sambo. Khabib serves as a fascinating matchup for Conor McGregor as the two fighters seem like each other's worst nightmares. Conor McGregor is often criticized for an underdeveloped ground game because of how featherweight contender Chad Mendes held him on the mat for most of their fight. Yet McGregor specializes on countering opponents who leap in with wild shots, which is the only way Khabib learns to strike. So the question is, can Khabib close the striking range safely enough to get in on McGregor with a takedown? If he can, then McGregor is in for a long night. Khabib excels in top control, working most frequently from a mounted crucifix. Rather than just staying in position, Khabib works numerous rides, such as knee on belly and even knee on face, to hurt and wear down his unfortunate opponent. Coupling that with his great ability to trap limbs to open up ground and pound, he's frankly a terrifying opponent for McGregor. It's really a case of the best puncher in the division versus its best grappler, Nate Diaz. If you really want to push a storyline, McGregor vs. Diaz 3, this time at lightweight, is a fantastic way to do it. With McGregor's sole UFC loss coming to Nate Diaz, followed by a rematch that McGregor won narrowly and controversially, it would be fascinating to see them fight again. Nate has always been a very tough stylistic matchup for McGregor, a fighter who is known to lean forward on his otherwise beautiful punches. McGregor's tendency to lean with his punches combined with his trouble with longer, taller fighters allowed Nate Diaz to give him fits. Nate was very comfortable to jab from the outside and counter with a nice check hook or full-on slap to the face whenever McGregor tried to get in. The final round of the rematch ended with McGregor on the floor getting battered by Nate Diaz, and a lot of fans argue that Diaz should have won that rematch too. So for McGregor, there's a chance to win the fight convincingly, and for Diaz, there's an awful lot of money. While it can really be argued that Diaz hasn't done enough in the lightweight division to earn a title shot, the fact that he has already beaten the champion makes a great case for him at the very least being able to prove he can do it again. For those of you who love ad-free viewing and free things, we're excited to announce the Premium Network. The Premium gets you early access to videos from TheSportster, CBR, The Gamer, and many other great channels. Literally thousands of videos in one place with ad-free browsing. How sweet is that? Sign up for free at The Premium by clicking the link to start binge-watching videos from your favorite channels. Eddie Alvarez, the second rematch of the list. Eddie Alvarez is a troubling fighter who always gets hurt early on and usually packs it later. Recently fighting Dustin Poirier, although the fight being ruled a no contest due to accidental down knee strikes, Eddie is already on the right track to getting another title shot. The first fight saw Eddie getting countered a lot. While he attempted the sort of double right hands that would trouble a fighter that likes to step back a lot, he ultimately wasn't quick enough to make effective use of them. Every leg kick thrown by Alvarez managed to knock McGregor off balance, but in true Eddie Alvarez fashion, he kind of got bored using them. It was the decision to abandon those leg kicks and try to come in with a technique he hadn't properly refined yet, which allowed McGregor to get control of the fight and win. In his post-fight interview, Eddie said that he had no idea why he abandoned what was working for him and fought stupid. We hope he can avoid that next time, as he is still a dangerous competitor that has the tools to beat McGregor, but maybe needs a little more refinement. Jose Aldo. It probably seems weird to put Conor in a rematch against Aldo. After all, the fight is essentially a gift. It seems a little unfair, though, that the long-reigning featherweight champion and only one to defend the title doesn't get a rematch against the man that embarrassed him. What was so striking about the McGregor fight was that Jose Aldo got knocked out via lunging in angrily and wildly, which is not something that Jose Aldo, a fighter who lives and dies by his formidable jab, usually does. It's clear that McGregor riled Aldo up to the point where he let technique go out the window a little bit. Aldo brings the sort of techniques that McGregor has trouble with: a good jab, low kicks, and a heavy top game. If Aldo were to focus on his jab, low kicking from the outside and mixing in his underused but very good takedowns to make better use of his stellar Brazilian jiu-jitsu, he could give Conor a tough fight. While Conor's fiercely accurate counter-punching may give Aldo a lot of trouble and possibly cost him the fight again, it's still a matchup that deserves a rematch as well. Donald Cerrone. Since the famous Go Big press conference, people have wanted a fight between Donald Cerrone and Conor McGregor for two reasons. We know they don't like each other, and Cowboy is a scary matchup for Conor. We want to make it clear, Conor McGregor is a fantastic fighter and one of the best around today, but styles make fights. The best fighters have all lost to guys with tricky styles. Cowboy is in many ways that sort of fighter to Conor McGregor. McGregor's trouble with fighters with reach and height on him, low kicks, and McGregor's trouble gassing later in fights makes him a prime target for Cerrone, who is significantly taller, has terrifying low kicks, but also has one of the fastest switch kicks to the body in the sport today. Cowboy is the sort of fighter who can keep McGregor at range and really damage his body and cardio with kicks to the leg and gut. That, combined with underrated wrestling and legitimately great BJJ skills, Cowboy is a formidable matchup to McGregor. Fights are all about stepping up to the challenge, and if McGregor was able to defeat Cowboy even with all those things working against him, he would in no time become even more of a legend than he is now. It's time for our trivia questions. Conor McGregor is the third UFC fighter to have won belts in 2 UFC weight classes. Who was the first? Keep watching for the answer. Joe Duffy. Prior to Nate Diaz's win, Duffy was the last guy to ever beat McGregor. The fight began, and as soon as Duffy realized he didn't like how good Conor was at striking, he took McGregor down and tapped him out with a choke. Do we think Duffy could do the same now? It's really hard to say, as McGregor's grappling has improved exponentially, and he is far harder to take down now compared to how he was back then. Duffy also took a significant break from MMA in order to pursue professional boxing for a while, so we also don't know if that time has allowed him to improve techniques that would allow him to get the better of McGregor's standing. Duffy does have a lot of the skills that McGregor isn't fond of, like a great probing jab, but at the same time, so much has changed about both of them that it's practically a new fight. Very rarely in MMA do you get to see two fighters face off at the start of their career and then meet each other again when both are in their prime. It would be fascinating to see them face off one last time just to see how much has changed in those years since their first fateful encounter. Rafael dos Anjos. We could talk about how Rafael dos Anjos is a scary pressure fighter. We could talk about how he relentlessly backs his opponents up to the cage, hammers them with body kicks whenever they try to move left or right, and manages to keep them in place for his takedowns. We could talk about the horrifying, smothering top game that Rafael dos Anjos has and how it's better than anyone McGregor has ever fought before. We could talk about all of this, but what we really want to talk about is how annoying it was that Rafael dos Anjos versus Conor McGregor got cancelled in the first place. Rafael dos Anjos has the sort of striking that can wilt anyone. Having beaten Donald Cerrone twice, Anthony Pettis as well as Nate Diaz, we know that Rafael isn't particularly bothered about fighting at a reach disadvantage, and he also knows how to use his kicks to make the most of what length he does have. Likewise, it was a fascinating matchup for Conor, who seemed to be under the impression that Rafael dos Anjos was simply a bigger Jose Aldo, in spite of the fact that they are two completely different types of fighter, Aldo being the counter fighter and RDA being the pressure fighter. Robbie Lawler. On a few occasions, Conor has expressed interest at going for the welterweight title. While Conor has the star power to money his way to that shot, we think the most interesting matchup for him at welterweight would be against former champion Robbie Lawler. Robbie too is a southpaw, something McGregor rarely faces, but the two are completely different fighters. We've talked a lot about McGregor's difficulty against fighters with more reach than him, but we haven't addressed that McGregor rarely likes to be in exchanges. While McGregor is an entertaining fighter, we never see him in an out-and-out brawl. He prefers single shots and then resetting away from his opponent. It's very rare to see him trading huge shots with someone that wants to be there. This would be a steep test for McGregor, who would be fighting against a real welterweight for the first time. As while he and Nate fought at 170, they were actually both lightweights who didn't cut for the fight. This fight would pit McGregor against someone who is not only a brawler, but also larger than McGregor. Would McGregor be able to use his stellar technique and timing to turn the bout into the sort he wants? Or would it become an out-and-out slugfest? Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza is a fantastic fighter who often flies under the radar, never quite in title contention, but always terrifying. Edson would be an interest matchup for reasons you should be used to hearing about by now. He has a great jab, great defensive boxing in general, and terrifying kicks. In fact, he's probably the most powerful kicker out of anyone on the list. He has the boxing to work against McGregor's amazing counterpunching, but he's such a devastating kicker, actively finishing fights with low kicks, and we want to see if this would cause McGregor to adjust his stance. McGregor's low, taekwondo-like stance makes him very susceptible to low kicks from the outside. While it would be tempting to try to punt the vulnerable-looking inside legs, it takes so little effort to simply check it and hurt the kick. A quick pivot, and instead of kicking his leg, you've kicked the hardest part of the shin. This is a technique McGregor is very comfortable using, which is why you don't see guys hammering his legs as much as you probably should. Barboza has also never had to face someone with the same level of counterpunching skill as Conor. While he's fought good strikers like Anthony Pettis, he hasn't really fought someone that is so eager to get you the lead. It would be interesting to see if the most powerful striker in the division could get outwitted by McGregor. Tony Ferguson. Our last spot goes to Tony Ferguson, the fighter who deserves the McGregor fight the most. He's on a tear in the lightweight division and has beaten more ranked opponents than anyone else in the lightweight division right now, including Khabib. Not only is he the #1 contender, but he's the guy getting held back by Conor's chasing of the Floyd super fight. So what does El Cucuy have on Conor? Reach, the ability to pressure relentlessly, and dangerous snap kicks to the body that McGregor also likes to make use of. It's very easy to see him winding McGregor, rocking him and slapping on the Darce choke that he's weirdly good at getting. A submission win for Ferguson after a fight which is won mainly on the feet seems very possible. It's not like McGregor has no shot though. Tony Ferguson is very hittable, which is great for a precision striker like Conor McGregor. Conor's accuracy is talked about a lot. If you can hit precisely, you'll do far better than if you can hit hard. Conor is someone who focuses on his precision but also has tremendous hitting power. That's a factor in all of his fights, but when fighting against a guy like Ferguson, it becomes a key. Tony has the advantages on paper, he has the reach. He has a style that McGregor dislikes, but he is also easy to get smacked. And the answer to the UFC's first dual division champion was... it was the natural, Randy Couture, who held both the heavyweight and light heavyweight titles. Conor McGregor is a great fighter, but he's also in the deepest division in MMA. Around every corner there's a guy that can pose a massive challenge to him. Who do you think could beat McGregor? Who would you like to see him face? Leave a comment and let us know.